6 days of rioting in a Negro section of Los Angeles.
The 1965 Watts Rebellion was a watershed moment in American history that was the direct result of mass organizing on the part of Black communities throughout the city of Los Angeles. At the heart of the rebellion were decades of systemic racism and oppression. Black Americans in Los Angeles, as in many cities across the United States, faced widespread discrimination in housing, education, and employment. Specifically in LA, Black Angelenos were consistently positioned to receive the worst housing conditions, the lowest forms of education, and the least amount of healthcare, while being forced to survive within the thinnest margins of the economy. Thus, the Watts neighborhood, predominantly Black and characterized by its poverty and neglect, became a tinderbox of discontent, a lost cause waiting for a spark in the night.
It began as many race riots have begun with the arrest of a Negro by white officers, right here at this corner. In this case, 2 young Negroes.
On August 11, 1965, that spark came in the form of a routine traffic stop, as it often does, that escalated into an altercation between police officers and a young Black motorist named Marquette Fry. As tensions flared, the scene quickly descended into violence, with angry crowds venting their frustration at years of police brutality and social injustice. Over the next 6 days, the streets of Watts erupted in a wave of rioting, looting, and arson, leaving 34 people dead, hundreds injured, and millions of dollars in property damage. The McComb Commission report, which was the official state of California report of that year, attempted to sugarcoat several of the key issues brought forth by the rebellion. When framing the housing conditions in South Central, the report states,
"Compared with the conditions under which Negroes live in most other large cities of the United States, Los Angeles conditions are superior. This has been confirmed by witnesses before this commission, who noted, for example, that the majority of dwelling units in Watts are single-family structures and that the streets and lawns are well kept for a poverty area."
Yet, the report could not sweep away a massive rebellion with dismissive rhetoric and patronizing language. This uprising was an after-effect of several decades of aggression directing at working-class citizens by the hands of city planners, officials, real estate developers, and most visibly, police officers. Aggression that had worn thin the patience of Black and brown Angelenos, who then took to the streets and set the city ablaze. Further along, when the report goes into the testimony of Black Angelenos, the structural scale of housing violence becomes evident.
Nevertheless, we have received extensive testimony expressing residents' dissatisfaction with the area's physical facilities. Of particular concern to us is the fact that a serious deterioration of the area is in progress. Houses are old and require constant maintenance if they're to remain habitable. Over 2/3 of them are owned by absentee landlords. And at the same time, the development of public housing has been limited by the failure of voters to improve governmental development of low-cost housing as required by the California Constitution.
How would you like to have a bunch of cars right in your backyard? So what if some kids get out there playing and they pile one car too high and it comes crashing down and there's no place for it to crash but right into the yards? And I think that's dangerous, and I don't see why the city allows it to be like that.
In my research into the Watts uprising, one of the biggest lessons that I keep taking away from the stories is that people were able to expose the systemic effect of racial capitalism to a whole global audience that had a different vision of the world than the one that they were seeing then on the news. This is Color Mind, a place where I talk about things I've thought about, so maybe you can think about them too. And I've been thinking about mutual aid.
And I want you to know something very important before I even start this song.
According to Dean Spade, author of Mutual Aid is a collective coordination to meet each other's needs. It's based on an ethos of direct action and shared understanding that the conditions we are currently living in ain't fucking it.
I said, hold up, wait a minute. Something ain't right.
This is not the same as charity work, which is a sneaky little invention where elites provide aid for problems that they're responsible for, and we thank them by promising to stay poor forever. Anything for the team.
What's the point of even being alive if we can't do this?
I'm sorry if I'm the first person to break this to you, but charities are never going to be able to fix the underlying issues of the causes they promote. And I'm not going to say that that's entirely their fault, but it's not something that they can really help. It's baked into their model. It's because the charity model perpetuates a dynamic of dependency where poor people rely on external aid from upper class people who then don't address the root of the challenges that poor people are facing. It's kind of funny how rich people's solutions to global poverty always seem to involve managing the poor and never redistributing the wealth. Shocker. In contrast, mutual aid emphasizes empowering communities to support each other directly, fostering self-reliance and autonomy. This can create a domino effect where we start with one alternative, like, hey, we're going to get together and make a weekly potluck. But then that reveals that we have other shared problems. Maybe a lot of people can't make the totally fucking banging potluck we want to do because we don't live in a walkable city or there isn't good access to public transportation. So then we decide, hey, what if we do a carpool? Or how about one step more than that? What if we decide to buy a couple bikes and do our own little bike share program? As unglamorous as this sounds, isn't this exactly how movements are built? As people become invested in one another and in their community, one problem reveals another problem that we care about more because I realize that my problem and your problem stem from the same place. Mutual aid projects, or MAPs, strive to provide adequate help where there is none. And I like to think of them like that, like a map, a path to solving societal problems with everyone in our society in mind. So, what does this look like?
Let's get into the inner workings and the meaning of this. Let's get into the inner workings and the meaning of a black revolution and why black people have a right to take what's theirs. 1, we want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our own black communities. 2, we want full employment for our people. 3, we want decent housing fit for shelter of human beings. 4, we want an end to the robbery of the black community by the white racist businessman. 5, we want decent education that teaches us about the true nature of this racist, decadent system. Education that teaches us about our true history and our role in the society and the world today. 6, we want all black brothers to be exempt from military service. 7, we want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people. 8, we want all black brothers and sisters held in federal, county, state, city, jails, and prisons to be released because they have not had a fair trial. They've been tried. They've been tried by all white juries who have no understanding of the average reasoning man in the black community. Number 9, this is where Brother Huey is being caught. We just want the courts to make sure we have peers on the jury of people from the black community as defined by their jive constitution, the so-called United States. The 10, summary with the major political objective. That is, we want land, bread, housing, clothing, education, we want justice, we want peace as black people in this nation.
During the Civil Rights era, the Black Panther Party emerged as a revolutionary force for seeking justice and empowerment for the black community. Central to their mission was the Free Breakfast Program, aka Breakfast for Children, a grassroots initiative that became a symbol of resistance and community care not only in Oakland, California, but nationwide, providing nutritious meals to thousands of underprivileged children before there was such a thing as reduced lunch across the country. This initiative was more than a charitable endeavor. It wasn't charity at all. It was a radical assertion of the right for people to be fed and to be educated.
So we got to understand here the educational program that you have to be able to figure out whether it will go on the right lines where the people will end up in a situation where they can be able to really control themselves. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, the people that take this local foundation and start stealing money because they won't be really educated to why it's the people's thing anyway. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism like you got in Africa 9, like you got in Haiti.
And that people should continue to assert that right in the face of institutional neglect. Not now, Aang. Under the charismatic leadership of figures like Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, the Panthers transformed the mundane act of serving breakfast into a political statement. The program aimed not just to feed hungry mouths, but to expose the failure of a system that perpetuated racial and economic injustice. It became a communal rallying point, not only in Chicago, but across the nation, fostering a sense of collective strength and resilience within marginalized communities.
People aren't hip to that yet. They're not really aware, because they know some shit's going on in this country somewhere. But a lot of people out there don't know where it's at. They think it's the black people doing it. All those riots are causing my life to be miserable in all areas, you know. And they really haven't focused in on the fact that it's the pigs and their mentors, the people who control the pigs, the power structure, those bald-headed businessmen at the Chamber of Commerce, you see? They're not turned on to that power structure. They just know that life is becoming increasingly miserable for everybody. But when they find out who it is that's causing the trouble, and who it is that's making life miserable, then they're all going to be just like the Panthers.
It's clear that the ones who are supposed to be protecting us have fallen asleep at the wheel or are intentionally sinking the ship for the insurance money. So how are we going to make it to tomorrow, with or without them? That is what mutual aid is for. As we can see from the work the Black Panthers did in their community and the FBI's subsequent attempts to invalidate that program before co-opting reduced lunch or free lunch for themselves, mutual aid is scary to the state because it reminds them that we don't need coercion or a profit motive to take care of one another. The Breakfast for Children program is a gold standard of great mutual aid because it broke stigmas, brought people together to meet their direct needs, and then educated them enough for them to move as a collective block, to understand that they had a shared understanding of the different issues that were plaguing them.
But the people have to stand up and demand. They have to understand that they have a right. They have a right to demand that these judicial procedures be carried out in the right manner.
When you think about it, capitalism is a hostile system. It forces you into competition with your brother. And Yo, chill. Bro, we can collab. When you think about it, capitalism is a hostile system. It forces you into competition with your brother and tells you that the blood is sweet, that self-interest is the all-powerful force pushing humanity into the cosmos. But it's not. It isn't. When we do mutual aid, we expose the failure of a current system based on individualism and antisocial tendencies, and we provide an alternative, one that feels immediate and connected. In this context, looking at what the norm is now, mutual aid is a necessary and radical act. And that's why I'm saying we need to get together. Let's do some mutual aids. Like, I'll come to your house. I'll bring the Qdoba. You bring Chipotle. Like, I got Mario Kart for real. We can like source games. Like, we can all meet at the oh shit. We're all out of a third place. Not your home, not your job, not the sex dungeon you rent because your mom is weird about you using the unfinished side of the basement, but a place in between. And everyone's talking about it. Jordan Teresa, Mina Lay,
Elliot Sang,
Andrewism. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. It's very, very bigly. And for me, I see the decline of libraries in America as the perfect martyr for the loss of mutual aid spaces. When I think about it, libraries are the place to be educated, motivated, and validated, and all the other feelings that one black guy on TikTok that's a librarian makes me feel.
I'm so glad you're still in this world. I'm so glad that you woke up. But if you're sitting in your bed like this, it is okay to not be okay. If you're battling anxiety, if you're battling depression, I'm with you, my friend. We're going to Taylor swiftly slap around those intrusive thoughts together. You are alive, and I'm so happy.
It's literally the definition of a mutual aid project. Libraries are the ideal third spaces, and the reason we're losing them is because they don't fit within capitalism. They're anti-capitalist. In a library, individuals are not atomized. You're not just a consumer or a producer or just an audience member. You get to be your whole, complete, weird-ass self. If you want to sit in a corner and read Mysterious Girlfriend X while drawing fan fiction of UNFD signifier whilst listening to Red Taylor's version, you can do that if you please in the library for as long as you want. There's no entrance fees or time limits. Everyone is welcome at the library.
And this is important because third places are one of the last bastions or avenues that we have left where socialization is the priority, not commodification or simply consumption. When we lose third places like libraries, we lose opportunities to help and be helped by our neighbors, to build bonds that spill out into the tapestry of our lives for the better. Like someone helping you parallel park, or a lady with a child giving up her grocery cart so you don't have to search in between the butt cheeks of your car seats to find a quarter. That random insightful conversation you get from an old head while waiting for your haircut. I mean, of course we have a loneliness epidemic. A lot of us are legitimately scared of people because they live in different realities and think that's normal. Oh, well, ugh. Okay, I see where you're coming from, but I see a direct correlation between younger generations, Zillennials, Gen Alphas, being more cynical and doomerist, and the lack of spaces people currently have in general to experience the random act of kindness that happened more frequently in a walkable city rather than a gated suburb. I mean, not too long ago, this was how the majority of our professional and personal relationships were created, through frequent passive encounters with almost strangers, not through a screen dropping contextless tidbits of their imagined lives. And I don't know, I think that means something. All this has me thinking a lot about the concept of generalized reciprocity, because I think we've lost the plot on what kindness really looks like. Generalized reciprocity is the phenomenon where individuals treat others the same way others have treated them in the past. When we lose something like GR, we lose the ability to see how our banal acts of kindness, the holding the door, the small talk around the water cooler, doesn't necessarily have immediate or even personal benefits. It's not for you today, but by exhibiting this behavior, we encourage other people to see it as normal, and that makes everyone closer in the process. Normalizing spaces of reciprocity helps normalize the ideas needed to shift mainstream thinking away from transactional relationships. Is the idea of kindness for its own sake rather than virtue signaling, the Southern type of kindness that says, I want to help you out regardless of how it's going to make me look to you because I'm more concerned with you as an end rather than a means. And I think places like libraries, a barbershop, all your quintessential third spaces are really good at this because they force you into an environment, in a room with people that don't share your background, and in them not sharing your immediate background, I feel like we get to see the universality or the ultimate commonality that we have between us, that we all hate waiting at the post office, we all dislike lines, we all don't like that it's raining. So if third places have all these benefits, are so pro-social, and are something we naturally want to make, then why do we let them disappear? The loss of the library is a systemic failure, one brought by corporate greed masking as tech optimism that allowed billionaires to push us further and further away from each other so that they could squeeze as many unskippable ads in the blank space. It's Amazon killing bookstores so that the closest one to you is a 20-minute drive. It's Ford for convincing Americans that America was for their cars and not their cafes or their YMCAs. It's on the federal government for not increasing wages to support a sufficient life in the imperial core while also threatening death and disease if you don't play along.
Hence, I have no mercy or compassion in me for a society that will crush people and then penalize them for not being able to stand up under the weight.
I want us to remember that this was and continues to be an active effort because humans want to create support networks. They want to collaborate amongst themselves. We don't like to be isolated. We are built for cooperation, not the profit motive. And so it takes an immense amount of attention and honestly innovation to keep us in our own little bubbles. When we talk about the loss of third spaces, I can't help but think we're actually recognizing the consequences of a consumerist culture that is increasingly butting heads with the human condition. Because even when money can buy happiness, it can't buy connection. And if we don't have connection...
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now. But has it ever occurred to you, Wally, that the process that creates this boredom that we see in the world now may very well be a self-perpetuating, unconscious form of brainwashing created by a world totalitarian government based on money, and that all of this is much more dangerous than one thinks? And it's not just a question of individual survival, Wally, but that somebody who's bored is asleep, and somebody who's asleep will not say no. See, I keep meeting these people. I mean, just a few days ago, I met this man whom I greatly admire. He's a Swedish physicist, Gustav Bjornstrand. He said, I think that New York is the new model for the new concentration camp, where the camp has been built by the inmates themselves, and the inmates are the guards, and they have this pride in this thing they've built. They've built their own prison, and so they exist in a state of schizophrenia, where they are both guards and prisoners, and as a result, they no longer have, having been lobotomized, the capacity to leave the prison they've made, or to even see it as a prison.
Some of y'all took the dinner with Jay when y'all should have took the dinner with Andre. Sucking my teeth.
Baby, take my hand and say it tastes like marzipan. Call my cotton candy and wear me like your Spider-Man. Baby, take my hand and say it tastes like marzipan. Call my cotton candy and wear me like your Spider-Man. Baby, take my hand and say it tastes like marzipan.
I got you, homie. I got you, homie.
Look, I'm gonna level with you guys. Living through constant history is tiring. I am fucking exhausted. My rent takes 60% of my income, and I share the fucking living room. In November, I have the choice between a Dementor and worst timeline Carl Fredrickson, the nigga from Up, for the privileges of using my tax dollars to fund genocide. And the other day when I stepped on the Stairmasters, my knees popped so loud the girl next to me had to put in her earbuds. Earbuds? Sometimes I feel so small, so irrelevant in the face of the odds. Like a single sud right on top of this failing humanity bubble that's been rising too close to the sun and for far, far too long. But then I remember that I had my friend Fatima stay with me while she was in town for a conference. She could have stayed at a crappy hotel, dropped money on expensive DC cuisine, and even more money on a shitty rental car. All included, that definitely would have been way more than the tiny stipend that her job gave her to go to this conference. But she knew me, and she knew that if I had a free couch, then she had a place to stay. And if I had a kitchen, or more presumably access to Grubhub, then we had something to eat. And that's mutual aid, getting together to meet each other's needs. Because I know when I go to the West Coast and I need a place to sleep, I'll be able to call up Fatima and my shelter and food will be taken care of outside of the profit motive. And isn't that the version of the world that I'm fighting for? Don't I want to live in the timeline where my out-of-state friends can come visit me and we can watch There Will Be Blood, definitely through legal means, instead of being in the timeline where we are There Will Be Blood?
Your milkshake. I drink it up!
Mutual aid is a pro-social, anti-capitalist response to systemic failure. Mutual aid is inherently anti-authoritarian because of how we're able to assemble ourselves without the need of hierarchy or the threat of violence, but instead based on mutual love and respect. We always, but especially in these times, we need to remember the Black Panthers and the Watt Rebellions and all the other movements targeted by the status quo because of how dangerous it is to the capitalist paradigm when we can organize without coercion. This, I believe, is where revolutions begin. When we build a shared understanding of our common problems, it motivates us to group action like little else. Like when you pass by 7-Eleven and you're doing the 5-5 taquitos, and you like, shit, I mean, I'm up, what you doing? Like, you guys know that? You guys also have that type of sexual frustration with 5-5, 7-Eleven taquitos? In that crucial aspect, much like my squatty potty after those 7-Eleven taquitos, mutual aid is a piece of resistance that is always there. In a society that wants you atomized, to create a bond with the people around you, not only depend on them, but to have them depend on you. That's a scary thing. Not because it's easy, but because it's viral. It's something we can't help but want to do more of. So what I'm saying here is recognize that you probably kind of already do mutual aid with your friends. This can look like sharing coping mechanisms, survival tactics, jobs that don't have shitty bosses, or something even as simple as footing the Uber Eats on a rotating basis. Mutual aid can also be about educating and creating shared understanding of the structural causes of our oppression so that more people can be free, which, maybe might look like a video essay, and also then maybe Praxis is funding it so we can continue to spread the message. Because my thing is that if we can instill mutual aid projects in our communities, I think we'll start to build the resilience necessary to find viable replacements for capitalism. Remember, sometimes you just need a map to find your way home.